Hello, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us today for our webinar. We're calling this one, How to Survive and Thrive in High Stakes Presentations. We've all been there. We've all had to give a presentation, as if that's not bad enough, where there's some super important people in the room, or it's a very important topic, and we feel like we need to use extra deodorant so we don't sweat too much. So I'm excited to have you join us today. We've got a great big group. We'll probably be joined by more than 300 people from all over the country. So whether it's early morning or afternoon, thanks for joining us. My name's Paul Yoakum, and I'm going to be your host today for the webinar, as well as the moderator. I just want to cover a couple of quick housekeeping items before we get started. Number one, we are recording the presentation today, so we'll send you a link to this recording following the session. You can watch it again. You can share it with others who couldn't attend. We'll also share with you a number of other resources related to what we're going to be talking about today. Second, I just want to bring to your attention the question box here on the GoToWebinar control panel. If you have questions or problems, type in there. We'll do our best to answer those for you. Lastly, there's a section called Handouts. I've posted a white paper in there, which is best practices related to high-stakes presentations. So a lot of what we'll talk about today can be found in there. You're welcome to download that as a complimentary resource, as a thank you for attending. I'll mention that again as a reminder for those that join us late at the end of the webcast. But with that, let's get rocking and rolling. We've got about 30 minutes, and I'll return at the end to talk a little bit about some ways you can take action on what you learned today. But I'm super excited right now to introduce our presenter today, and that's a fine gentleman by the name of Brad Holst. Brad, he's designed and implemented a variety of winning communication, training, and coaching programs for global clients and startups, companies as large as the Fortune 50 and so on. He's worked with organizations like Disney, Clorox, Armor All, and a variety of others, and is just an amazing presenter, and I'm super excited to have him join us today. He's also one of my really good friends and a great guy. So Brad, if you're there, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you take it away from here.
Hey, thank you, Paul, and thank you everyone who made the choice to be here today. There's no greater gift than you can give than that of your time, and we're really going to try to honor that by giving you something in this half hour they can start putting to use immediately. And let me just preface what we're going to do today and just tell you a little bit about Mandel Communications, just so you know the validity of what we're going to be sharing here today. What we do at Mandel Communications is we help people first think better, so then help them speak better, so that you get whatever results you're trying to get from your communication efforts. And ultimately for a business, this means things like being able to make better decisions and make them faster, keeping focused on the right things and executing with excellence. And collectively, we do this by building what we consider to be the essential communication skills. That's presenting ideas and information, influencing others to action, and collaborating effectively and efficiently. And just so you know, we do this around the world. So the things we're going to share in this webinar literally are globally proven. They don't just work in Los Angeles, New York, and San Francisco, and Omaha City. They work around the planet. Certainly have to be localized a bit to fit some of the cultural nuances, but the things we're going to talk about today truly have been globally proven. So with that little bit of background, let's get to the reason why we're here. And I want you to think for a moment, how do you feel when you know you have a high-stakes presentation coming up? However you define high stakes. You maybe feel a little bit like this. You know, you might be one of those people who really looks forward to making a high-stake presentation. You know, some people just know that they are literally an unparalleled career enhancement opportunities. I mean, for those moments, you, your ideas, your credibility are all center stage. But for a lot of others, giving a high-stakes presentation is a really uncomfortable, it really almost feels like an unnatural act for them. And for them, it's usually something they just try to survive. And make no mistake about it, high-stakes presentations are not easy. You know, the higher the stakes, the higher the degree of scrutiny you're going to get from that decision-making audience that you're talking to. If they don't clearly understand your thinking, if they don't see clear, compelling value in what you're recommending, excuse me there, and if they don't find you credible, confident, and trustworthy, you're not going to succeed. And you know, just thinking about that, thinking about not succeeding, that can keep a person up at night worrying. You know, you're worrying, what if I stumble? You know, what if I misspeak? What if I forget something or leave something out? Or what if I get surprised by a tough question I can't answer? Or even worse, what if I freeze? What if in the moment comes, you know, like my brain just goes blank, my body feels paralyzed, and of course the whole time the audience staring at me. I think the other thing that really keeps people up at night is, what if I fail? What if my recommendation is rejected? What if my credibility is damaged? And what if that stalls my career? I mean, is it any wonder that according to Gallup, 40% of the population fears public speaking? I mean, no wonder you might not be sleeping well before a high-stakes presentation. And why is that? Well, delivering a presentation includes strong elements of social evaluations. And I don't know about you, but I know how I feel. I really don't like to feel like I'm being judged on my ideas, and especially don't like to be judged on my performance. And just the act of presenting triggers a substantial cortisol response. If you're not familiar with cortisol, that's the stress hormone. And when that starts flowing through your body, you feel stressed. So it's only natural to be anxious about delivering a high-stakes presentation. It means you're human. But think for a moment. What's that anxiety left unchecked? What is it costing you? How might it be impeding the results you need to deliver? How might it be stalling your career even? And then think about what it might be costing your company or your organization. When your best ideas, your recommendations, your concerns are ignored because they weren't effectively presented, or even worse, never shared because you prefer to avoid making presentations. Well, that's why we're here today. This is why we're talking about how to not only survive, but thrive in high-stakes presentations. I've been doing this work for, well, I don't want to say how long. Let's just call it over 15 years. And my experience is anyone can become a really solid, really effective presenter. So today we're going to look at three things that will help you when you have a high-stakes presentation. We're going to look at what happens in the first 90 seconds, that first 1 to 2 minutes of presentation, because I can promise you success or failure really happens during that time. Then we're going to look at the type of thinking you need to do that'll empower you to do the type of speaking you need to do in a high-stakes presentation. And the final thing we're going to look at is this concept calling put your own oxygen mask on first. So what do you need to do behaviorally when you're under all this presentation stress to really come across in a way that's credible and engaging and helps you achieve your presentation goals? That's our agenda for our time together. So let's start with that succeed or fail in 90 seconds. And let's start by looking at attention spans. You know, back in 2000, there was a major study, university study on human attention spans. And back in 2000, what they came up with is our attention span is about 12 seconds. And what that means is we can do anything about 12 seconds, but then we need to be rehooked. We need to be re-engaged. Otherwise, we start to drift. And what's interesting is when you compare this to an attention span of a goldfish. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm instantly wondering, who funds these studies? Who's funding this goldfish research? But if you look at that, we are, as humans, back in 2000, we're only a little better than the goldfish. Well, think about what's happened in the world since 2000. Think about the things here that are distracting us. And think about, have our attention spans gone up? Have they gone down? In a 2015 study in Canada commissioned by Microsoft, our attention spans are now less than a goldfish. About 8 seconds between we need to rehook. And what do we have to thank for it? Well, a little over 10 years ago, smart devices hit the market, and boy, doggone those digital distractions. They are competing for mind share, they're ubiquitous, they're addicting, and it makes it harder than ever to get people's attention. Now, another reason why the first couple minutes are so important is something that Malcolm Gladwell talks about in Blink. And that's the fact that we humans thin slice. We start drawing conclusions about things, about people, and in the presentation world, about both the presenter and what they're talking about, literally in the first couple seconds, whether those conclusions are right or wrong. So what we've learned, what we've really proven in our experience doing this, is your success or failure really happens in those first 90 minutes. In those, 90 minutes, good God, the audience is long gone by then. Let me reframe that. It happens in the first 90 seconds. And in those first 90 seconds, your listener needs to have a compelling reason why you're speaking to them. They need to know what it is, right up front, what it is you want them to do. Otherwise, they feel like they're being held hostage. And they need to get a sense, begin to get that sense of, how can I be sure this is a good idea? And here's the real challenge with that. In those first 90 seconds, that's when the audience is most critical. That's if they're not getting those things we just looked at, they start checking out, especially if it's a virtual call like the one we're doing today. But even in live meetings, once the PowerPoint goes up and you're not holding attention, watch people go to their smart devices. And you know what's totally unfair about this is at the same time the audience is critical, this is when everyone I interview, everybody I talk to, all the research we said, that first 90 seconds is also when the speaker is the most anxious. It's just not fair. So knowing that those first 90 seconds are so important, what do you need to think about that will enable you to speak about the things that will grab your listener's attention? And it starts with a belief we have that if you don't have clarity of thinking, you'll never have clarity in your communication. And this is so challenged. You know, we're in the world of big data. None of you probably are dealing with simple, easy issues. You're probably dealing with fairly complex issues you're having to communicate. And how do you distill that complex information, that complex data, that complex things you need to talk about in something clear that your listener not only understands, but actually cares about? And that means one of the things you need to think about is your audience. And you know, when you're in a high-stakes situation, you better believe they're thinking about things like, I hope this isn't a waste of time, I hope they don't kill me with PowerPoint slides, I hope they're prepared, God, do they even really need to talk to me about it? Those are actually legitimate concerns, but I don't want them to get you down because every one of them actually wants you to succeed. They hope in that high-stakes presentation that you're going to help them be successful. Remember, your audience has challenges they're trying to act on. They have problems they're trying to solve. They have results that they're held accountable for. And if you understand the things that they care about and message to that, that's the foundation you need to be successful. But guess what? If they don't see the connection about the things they care about and your presentation topic and the outcomes it produce, they're not going to see that connection and you're going to lose them. So let's talk about how we can build that connective chain between what your audience cares about and your presentation outcomes. And it starts with, if you've got an idea, a recommendation, or a point of view, you've got to start before you share that idea, you've got to talk about why. You've got to link it to their care abouts. You've got to give them a problem they have that you're going to help solve. And that why, which is part of those first 2 minutes, has 3 components into it. You want to start by first linking to something that's top of mind to your audience as it relates to your idea, recommendation, or point of view. It's kind of your once upon a time. Gets people interested. Then, to really get them interested, you need to raise a challenge, a problem, an issue, something that's impacting the audience related to what you're going to talk about. This can be known information. It's even better when you're bringing new information, unknown information to your audience. Boy, that really has impact. And then you need to follow that logic through and think about, what's the so what? If this is important to the audience, they're facing these challenges, how's that impacting them? And the more quantifiable you can make that, the better. So we're thinking about numbers, we're thinking about dollars. And this way, we're now hitching a problem to that idea, that recommendation, or point of view. Now, to continue to build this chain out, notice there's our so what now is in the upper left and the rest of the chain is hidden. You also need to, in relation to your idea, be really clear what your call to action is, what it is that you want your listeners to do. You want them to listen, you want them to ask questions, you want them to evaluate, you want them to fund, approve, give resources, change their behavior, whatever that might be. And if you're calling them to action, you better also be offering up relevant, compelling benefits to them. Again, the more quantifiable, the better. So if the stuff in red is the why, the stuff we're looking at now is the what, and also part of the how. And in fact, let's take a big picture look. This is what you need to cover in those first 90 seconds. What's their situation, complication, and the implication of that? Setting up the why. What's the position, action, and benefit? Setting up the what and the how. And again, if you'll think through this, if you'll do your homework on the audience, you are well on your way to succeeding in those first couple minutes. But there's something else we need to talk about here. And that's now not just what you say, but how you say it and how you feel when you're doing it. And I like to call this concept, put your own oxygen mask on first. And what I mean by this is, you've all been on the airplanes, and you probably don't fly a lot of attention to it, but the flight attendants, always before the flight starts, they do their safety spiel. And of course, they let you know that in the event of an emergency, which of course, I'm going, holy crap, I hope that doesn't happen. But in the event of emergency, oxygen masks will drop down. And think about what they tell you to do. If you're traveling with a small child or somebody who acts like a small child, that might be how my wife describes me, or someone who needs assistance, whose oxygen mask do you put on first? Well, you put on your own. Because only then, with your oxygen mask in that high stress, dangerous environment when their oxygen masks are dropping down, only then, if you're taking care of yourself, can you take care of the people who are depending on you. And guess what? If you don't take care of yourself as a presenter, you'll never be able to take care of your audience. So we're going to look at 3 behaviors here that are like that oxygen mask. And you know what, if you look at these, you probably said, well, I've seen these before. Posture, eye contact, pausing. But what nobody really talks about, what they do talk about is why those are good for the audience, how it makes you come across. But the real power in these behaviors is they help you maintain composure under pressure. They help you be fully present when you're under stress and be able to think in the moment, either executing on your plan or adapting the plan as you need to based on what's happening on the room. So let's drill down on each one of these and start with open posture. And I'll tell you what, if you haven't seen Amy Cuddy's TED Talk, she's a professor at Harvard Business School. Her TED Talk about body language and its impact on both the speaker, the person, as well as the people they're communicating to, you really need to. And of course, one of the things she believes is you can actually change other people's perceptions and your own body chemistry based on changing your body positions. And she's a big believer in these power poses that give you that kind of strength and energy. And we'll look at, you don't necessarily want to look like Batman or Wonder Woman when you're presenting, but we'll look at what you can do with this. But one of the things that was really interesting about Amy Cuddy's, the research she's brought together in her new book, Presence, was one of her colleagues analyzed 185 venture capital presentations. They're looking at both the verbal and the nonverbal behavior. And here's what was surprising about what they found. The strongest predictor of who got the money was not the person's credentials or the content of the pitch. That's not to say those aren't important. But let's face it, most people that are really going after venture capital, they're trying to put their background as strong as they can make it, and they put a lot of effort in creating a strong business plan and working on their pitch. What they found was the strongest predictor of who got the money were these 3 traits: confidence, comfort level, and passionate enthusiasm. Well, let's look at some body language here. What are you seeing here? And by the way, we see this posture all the time when people are presenting. Now, we usually don't pay much attention to it. But unconsciously, we sure do. And what about this posture speaks for confidence? What speaks about comfort level? What speaks about passion and enthusiasm? And in fact, these are the type of postures, when you're in them, causes the body to produce cortisol, that stress hormone. And you know what? If you're looking stressed, what do we humans do? We mirror one another. So guess what? You've got uncomfortable, stressful body language. You're going to see it mirrored back from you, from your audience, and that's not going to help you at all. So what do we need to do? Well, I always think one of the places we can go to look for really good examples of modern presentation skills is the top-rated TED Talks. Not all the TED Talks. The top-rated ones, though, tend to be pretty good. And here's 4 from the past year, actually year to 18 months. Very diverse people talking on very diverse topics, but just look at them. They look confident. They've clearly got a comfort level about what they're talking about, and they look passionately enthusiastic what they're talking about. And I don't know, I look at them and I start to feel good too. I can feel the oxytocin flowing, and so can they. And that's the power of an open, engaged posture. And one of the things, this doesn't happen by accident. It takes some practice. If you're going to move to this sort of thing, think about all the places you can practice. Maybe you take a commuter train to get to work, so you're waiting on the platform. Open up your posture. Just practice standing there, nice and relaxed. Anytime you're waiting in line could be a chance to practice that. Let's talk about one more of the 3, and that's sustained eye contact. And if you think about eye contact, when people converse, we converse eyeball to eyeball. It's how we talk to each other. And you know what? If you think about conversation, one of the most natural things we do, it's driven by having some sort of conscious thought, some sort of emotional feeling, but we're taking in feedback constantly through our eyes of how the other person is reacting to our conversation. And we're constantly, without even thinking about it, making adjustments and doing the right thing so we have an effective conversation. But what happens when we stop presenting is we stop making meaningful eye contact. We start doing the eye dart. Our eyes never rest anywhere. They're just moving around the room. If they rest somewhere, they usually rest on the PowerPoint slide. And guess what that does? That cuts off that feedback loop through the eyes to the brain, and suddenly the brain starts freaking out, saying, I don't know how they're reacting, and suddenly people start talking faster, and their tone of voice gets higher, and the ums start coming out, and we find just by stretching out eye contact, it works miracles. And what are we talking about here? We're talking about going from this to this. Look at one person at a time. Make sustained, connected eye contact. Then move on to another one. And by the way, I don't know about you, but this is already starting to freak me out because it's really like staring at me. So certainly you can overdo this. You really want to think about making about 3 seconds worth of eye contact. Or maybe a better way to think about is look at someone and share a phrase with them. Share a quick thought, and then move on to another person and share a phrase with them. And you know what? That's going to average out to about 3 seconds. And for our brains, what happens is they go, oh, thank goodness, the feedback loop is restored. I'm able to process how they're responding, and suddenly you're in charge. It's miraculous what happens with the people we coach when you get them to rethink their eye contact. The stress levels just fall down, and their efficacy goes way up. So about 3 seconds of eye contact per person. And then there's one more equally important, maybe even more important, and that's learning how to default the pauses to think and to breathe. So what I want you to think about here is I want you to think about someone you think is a really good presenter, someone you can actually picture presenting. Or the next time you see someone presenting, watch how they use silence. Watch how they finish an important thought, and they end that thought by going to silence for a moment. And you're thinking, that's so powerful. That is so impressive. But you know what they're thinking? How are they reacting to this? Where am I going next? What else do I want to do? And they do it in a totally relaxed way. They've learned they can pause their way through anything. In fact, that's something I heard from someone I bumped into who recognized me from a workshop they led, and said, that was a great workshop. I said, what do you love about it? Little words where I learned I could pause my way through anything. And she went on to explain how presentations used to feel like a roller coaster. She was even nervous in line. She felt strapped in and didn't control the pace. When it was over, she didn't know what happened. But now she learned how to pause. She felt completely in control. Pausing also allows us a moment to breathe. Most people, when they're presenting, especially in high-stakes situations, they're taking infrequent, short, shallow breaths. It makes their voice sound kind of shaky, and collectively just adds to their nervousness and the perception of how other people perceive them as being nervous. So those pauses give us a chance to actually put oxygen in the system. And very importantly, those moments give you moments to think. And you know what? If you get some habit around pausing, if you start building those habits, intuitively your pauses will be just about right for the audience. You finish a big thought, going to the next one, you'll take a longer pause. In the middle of a thought, there'll be short pauses, because guess what? Pauses are the punctuation of our spoken language. So not only helping you, but they help the listener, they help your audience pay attention. And they're a great way to emphasize things. You know, perhaps the most impactful way you can emphasize something is to put a pause in front of it. Okay, so now if I was going to suggest pausing, just do it regularly and often. Make it a habit. It's a good habit to have. So today we've looked at three things: the importance of the 90 seconds, what you need to think about to empower you to speak about during those first 90 seconds, and this concept of putting your own oxygen mask on first. But in the words of the late, great Steve Jobs, one more thing. If you try to deliver a perfect presentation, you are derailing your success. You are guaranteed to mute your natural conviction, and you know what? You're actually going to increase the mistakes you make. Great presenters are not perfect presenters. If you go back a little over 10 years ago and listen to Steve Jobs introducing the iPhone, you'll literally be, especially if you read the transcript, but you'll be surprised the numbers of mistakes he made. Yet the audience, I don't remember noticing them. And you know what? When you do make a mistake and the audience notices, they'll look to you. And you know what? If you're cool with it, they probably will be too. So please, please, please stop trying to become a perfect presenter and focus instead on being a great presenter. And the formula for that, pretty simple. It takes knowledge plus coaching with multiple practices, and that brings you to mastery, having the right habits to get you through that. You know, one way you can learn more about to do that, I'd love it if you'd come out and visit our website, mandel.com. And certainly you can learn about our training courses and things like that. But we have some things that are just available right now for you. Under our resources tabs, a ton of videos, many of them done with Harvard Business Review in partnership with them, that can help make you a better presenter. We've got a bi-weekly blog that's wildly popular, and every couple weeks more tips and ideas and things come out to help you be better at what you're doing. And I just think if you did nothing else but came out and checked those out, you'd find a lot of value in it. And there's one more thing I think you'll find a lot of value, and that's that gift for being here today that Paul was talking about. Paul, you want to tell them a little more about that and where they can go next?
Yeah, you bet. Great job. Great job. Always wonderful insights. Always learn something new from you, Brad, every time we do one of these. So, and I need to work on, there's a number of things I'm reminded of that I need to work on. For those of you that joined us maybe a little bit late, in the handout sections of the GoToWebinar control panel, there's a white paper, best practices for to win high-stakes finalist presentations. A lot of content in there related to what we talked about today. Go ahead and download that if you haven't already, and enjoy that. It's kind of a nice resource. And again, we'll send you the recording of what we talked about today. In addition to the Mandel site, we've got a landing page specifically geared towards this topic around becoming a more credible presenter. So there's a number of resources out there. If you just want to move to the next slide as well, Brad. There are a number of resources available there. If you have questions, you can contact us. If you want to learn more about what Brad has talked about, if you just need help with certain things, if you're a salesperson that maybe is losing out on deals because of your presentation skills, or a marketer who wants to do a better job of synthesizing and conveying ideas credibly to executives, we've got a number of resources for you there as well. So with that, we are just at the top of the hour. We've got another minute left, so I just want to thank everybody again for joining us. And Brad, I'm going to turn it back to you just as a kind of final thought and wrap up before we sign off for the day.
Well, thank you, Paul. And again, thanks to everyone for being here. A little over 15 years ago, after I thought a great career in the Walt Disney Company and also with the Clorox Company, I moved into doing this type of work. And you know, something I noticed way back then is the ramifications of building strong presentation skills go way beyond what happens in your business presentations. What I've seen, and this never gets old, this is why I'm still as passionate as I was when I got into this business, is when people build these skills, they really do transform. It's like they have this new infectious self-confidence, this inner strength, and it seems to just follow them around everywhere they go. You know, it's like going to the gym and you start getting some muscle tone going, and you just feel better and more confident all the time. And it just collectively seems to have incalculable benefit to both their careers and even to their personal life. And so for me, that's why if I left you with the last thought, is building presentation skills. And people who can do great business presentations, they're the rock stars of business. It could be one of the smartest investments you could make in your personal development. So again, thank you for being here, and hope our paths cross sometimes here in the future. Thank you.
Thanks again, Brad. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. We'll go ahead and conclude our broadcast at this time. If you have any questions, reach out to us at any time. But thanks again for joining us, and we hope to catch you at a future webinar, if not before soon. So look for the recording with an email later today or tomorrow. And thanks again, everybody. Appreciate you joining us, and have a great rest of your day.